My talk is going to have a couple of interactive exercises. So I need everyone to find a partner, and in 20 seconds, say hello to your partner, introduce yourself, where you work, and your role. Okay, go. 20 seconds. Okay, you three. Okay, come on back. Come on back. All right, so now you have the person that you're going to be sharing your deepest anxieties with, okay? This is the person that you're going to be telling things to that you would rather not tell to your colleagues. Okay, this is a story about what to do when there is no good map of where to go. It's called Leading Through Tumultuous Times. So we're all builders in here, right? We're all builders. We love to build things. And when we imagine building things, we think it will look something like this. A bunch of very happy people with known building blocks on a very stable foundation. We're all working together. We're all communicating well. We're all in the same room. But is that how it feels when we're building new products? No. It feels like we're on unstable ground. We're on uncharted territory. Feels like we're in the middle of a wide ocean with nothing underneath us. It feels like, for me at least, we're setting out on a journey, on a big, big, hairy, audacious goal that we're setting up. Do you guys hear that? Can we fix the audio real quick? Oh, okay, got it. So it feels to me like we're setting off on a journey. We've gotten the best crew together. We're setting off. We're all on the ship, and we're going to the North Pole. And we've gotten this big, hairy, audacious goal. Off we go. We're super excited. And then halfway through the journey, someone comes up from the engine room, and they say, "Captain, I have some bad news. The engine is very unstable. We have to stop the ship. We have to rebuild the engine. It is going to take only a couple of days, maybe a couple of weeks. And then we can start the ship back up, and we'll get to the North Pole." As soon as they walk away, someone comes in from the weather station, and they say, "Captain, I have news for you. We spotted a very big storm coming from the west. We have to tack the ship to the east and run away from the storm, or else we could be blown to bits." As soon as that person leaves, someone comes up from the lookout, and they say, "Captain, I've just spotted pirates. They're coming very fast. They're moving very fast from the east. We have to move the ship to the west and run away from the pirates as quickly as possible." And then, after you've gotten all this news, you get a phone call from the admiral. And the admiral says, "Captain, good news. Your resupplies for your journey back home will be there 2 weeks early. So you have a new deadline. You have to get to your destination faster than originally planned if you want to get funded and have the supplies to get back home." Does this sound familiar to anyone? So the problem when we're building products is that the foundation is unstable. The territory is often uncharted. People aren't communicating all the time with each other. They're in their little silos. They have partial knowledge. And we somehow, as product leaders, need to make decisions, really important, critical product decisions, under the conditions of uncertainty, ambiguity, and partial knowledge. So how do we do this? And how do we move the team forward and get to our destination? We as product leaders are often at the center of all of these decisions and all of this different knowledge coming at us from multiple different directions. And what we need to do is learn to navigate how to get through that. And there are a couple principles that I've used in my experience that have really helped to do this under multiple different conditions. So the first thing I want to tell you is that this is not unique and this is not new. Dee Hock, who's the founder and inventor of Visa, he recently tweeted this, and I thought this was so perfect for the talk. When you're inventing something new, think about this. He says, making proper, effective decisions when you have all the facts is not management, it is bookkeeping. Making such decisions when you have some of the facts and clear instruction from superiors is management, but leading is making such decisions when you have nothing but vision. So what are the principles to take you from having nothing but vision to having a product that will be successful in the market? And how do you help bring all of these different functions and all of these different people together on board with you to steer the ship in the same direction? Before I go into the 3 principles that have helped me do this, I want to tell you a little bit about where I'm coming from. My first degree was in economics and econometrics. And I love math. I did a lot of statistical modeling all through college. I worked at an economic think tank in college. And I worked with a lot of students of Jeffrey Sachs. We were modeling the Russian economic transition, doing a lot of huge statistical models. And we were presenting to the UN every week about here's how the Russian transition is going, here's what we expect. And we were horribly, terribly, catastrophically wrong. I worked there between 1993 and 1996. In 1998, what happened? I'm looking at Yana. She knows what happens. What happened? The entire Russian economy collapsed. And none of it was predicted in our models. How could we be so wrong? And how could the numbers have led us so astray? Well, one of the problems is that all of us who are doing the modeling were in a really nice, cushy office building in Manhattan, right down the street from the UN. So I picked up, and I was inspired by anthropologists. This is Margaret Mead. I was inspired to leave that desk in New York and go into the field and try to understand what was actually happening with people on the ground, because when we're modeling economic decisions, what we're actually modeling is human behavior. We're trying to understand how people behave, not how things behave in the natural world. So how can we actually get closer to the people that we're trying to understand or whose behavior we're trying to predict? So I went into the field. I lived in Russia. Living there allowed me to have much deeper insight into what was happening in the economic world of Russia. Predicted the credit boom in 2004, the rise of the ruble between 2004 and 2008. There were things that you could see when you were on the ground talking to people and experiencing the life world that you could not see when you were looking at the numbers and the statistics. So everything I learned about how to do really great product discovery, I learned in the field. This led me to first have a job at Leo Burnett Moscow, a global advertising role, where I worked primarily with Procter & Gamble in launching their brands into the Russian market. So brands like Secret and Tide and Tampax and Herbal Essences, all the things that we take for granted, needed to be completely rethought and redesigned when they came into a new market. And then I went to work at IDEO, where I used that understanding of people, that anthropological method, to design completely new digital products and platforms for industries as diverse as fintech, education, and even insurance. So using that approach of really understanding people deeply became a repeatable way to really get great insight and guide product discovery. From then, I went in-house to Salesforce, where I was asked to lead the Lightning Experience redesign, which was the largest redesign of the Salesforce product. I'll talk a lot about that. And then also led the creation of the product experience for the Salesforce IoT cloud. More recently, I was at AWS as a general manager and director of product, building a brand new to the world software experience and building the team from 2 to 150 people. Recently, I've been advising a lot of product teams, startups, on both building their organizations and their products. So this is where I'm coming from and the experiences that I've had. And these experiences have allowed me to really say, here's how we ground ourselves and how we ground the product team when we're in uncharted territory and where there is no map available for where to start or how to go or even how to work together. How do we start? So the first way we start is to introduce 3 principles from the field to the product team to guide success when everything is tumultuous and uncertain. So the first place we start, and Gibson talked about this earlier, customer obsession. When you don't know where to start, you don't know where to go, make the customer your North Star. And this is when we start, right? The field is wide open. We have nothing but the expanse of blue ocean in front of us. How do we start? Let's listen to what Jeff Bezos, the master of customer obsession, has to say.
What Amazon is, some people see you as an e-commerce company or a retailer. Others see you as an innovative tech company. You have Amazon Web Services, and you have original content, and you have Alexa, and so many other things. How should we be thinking about Amazon?
Yeah, I do get that is something that people get confused about sometimes. What is Amazon? We do such a diverse array of things, from producing original content at Amazon Studios to Amazon Web Services, where we sell startups and enterprises computing infrastructure, to the things that most people know about, which is our consumer offering, where we deliver things in little brown boxes. And these things seem so disparate. How is it that we're doing all of them? And the common thread, and really what it is it's an approach. We have a very distinctive approach that we have been honing and refining and thinking about for 22 years. And it's really just a few principles that we use as we go about these activities. At the very top of the list is one I've already mentioned, but you'll probably hear it 10 times throughout tonight because it's so central, and it is customer obsession. It's customer obsession instead of, for example, competitor obsession, or business model obsession, or product obsession, or technology obsession. There are many ways to center a business. And by the way, many of them can work. I know and have friends who lead very competitor-obsessed companies, and those companies can be successful. That's not a bad strategy. You have to be really good at close following. You identify winners when you watch your competitors very carefully. If they latch onto something that's working, you duplicate it as quickly as possible. It's a very good strategy in some ways because you don't have to go down blind alleys. If you're not pioneering, if you're only close following, it has some advantages. But it has some disadvantages too. And I like the customer obsession model. I think it's the right one. I think it's better than product obsession even. I think product obsession is not bad, but I think customer obsession gets you there in a healthier way.
So customer obsession. The first principle with customer obsession that I learned the hard way at Amazon when I came to work there is this customer obsessed instead of technology obsession, instead of competitor obsession, instead of product obsession, right? It's the instead of, it's that focus on the customer that is the hard thing about customer obsession. When I first started at Amazon, I was tasked to start a brand new product. And one of the very first things that I needed to do was to write a PR FAQ. You guys are all familiar with the Amazon PR FAQ, press release, frequently asked questions document. And I was a new product leader, and this was a crowded space that we were getting into with this product. So I worked with one of my product managers, and he and I developed this great customer map and how we were going to differentiate and win right, in this very crowded software space, in this very crowded software market? What were the features, and what were the customer value benefits, and what were all the ways that we were really going to double down on making this product different versus the customers? We had a great chart. It was, we thought it was like fantastic. And then every Amazonian that I showed the PRFAQ to said the exact same thing. That competitor thing, put that in the appendix. Put that in the appendix. And I said, but then nobody will read it. And they were like, right, we're customer obsessed. The focus of that document is on the customer. It's not on the competitor. It's not on the technology. It's not on the product. It's on the customer, right? So making that choice and being really clear about the fact that we are customer obsessed instead of these other things is the hard thing, is the first hard thing about the philosophy of customer obsession. The second hard thing is something that Jeff Bezos put out in the 2017 shareholder letter, where he says, resist proxies. So there was a lot of conversation about what does it count to be, like what counts in being customer obsessed? What counts as customer data, right? Is it numerical data? Is it anecdotes? What is it, right? And he put out this 2017 shareholder letter, and he wrote, resist proxies. Market research and customer surveys can become proxies for customers, something that's especially dangerous when you're inventing and designing products. I'm not against beta testing or surveys, but you, the product or service owner, must understand the customer, have a vision, and love the offering. Then beta testing and research and process, we talked about process in another section, can help you find your blind spots. A remarkable customer experience starts with heart, intuition, curiosity, play, guts, and taste. You won't find any of it in a survey. So, the resistance of proxies. What does that mean, right? It means, again, going into the field, understanding customers deeply, right, and actually leading and guiding product strategy from the place of empathy. And when you go into the field, right, you experience the world in a different way. You experience the world as your customers experience it. This is a photo of me in Ethiopia, living in a village, plowing a field with a team of oxen. And we were doing a project for IDEO, for the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And previously, every other project team had gone into the field, swooped in, done some interviews, got the data, got some statistics, did some surveys, and left. Our team lived in villages for several weeks, and we got new insights. In fact, the tools and the digital platform that we developed for the Gates Foundation from this project caused Melinda Gates, a few years later, when interviewed by Wired magazine, to say that human-centered design and the tools that we created that came out of this experience of living with people on the ground was the most important and impactful innovation in the developing world. Okay? So these are the types of insights that when you're looking for where to go and how to start, you start with living with people on the ground and experiencing the world through your customer's eyes, not through a survey. You guys up for this? Living with people? Yeah. Okay. So again, watch out. Watch out for proxies like surveys and tests. These are great tools to hone your ideas, but new ideas will never come from them. New ideas come from really deeply understanding and loving your customers and living their experiences. Another watch out, salespeople. Anybody in enterprise software? Anybody, enterprise software? All right, so who has had this experience? Salespeople come up to you and say, hey, product manager, you don't need to spend any time with customers because I spend a lot of time with customers. And I can tell you what your roadmap should be. Does this sound familiar at all? Yes, okay. Salespeople are not the customer. There's a very different mindset that we have as product designers and product visionaries when we experience the world through the eyes of our customers than when salespeople experience the world of trying to get past customer objections to make the sale. Okay? So yes, listen to salespeople. Salespeople are great sources of understanding what are the current sales objections to the product, but they are not a proxy for the customer. And finally, and this is something that I definitely want to caution all of you guys about, is making up fictional customers, okay? Sometimes these are called personas. Anybody use personas in their organization? I'm going to ask you to stop. You have real customers. You do not need to make up a Jenny or a Bob, right, with some fake demographic profile and some fake, experiences with the product. You have real customers. Use those customers' names because then you can go back to them. If you make product decisions based on people, make sure those product decisions and those assumptions that you've ascribed to those people are testable. That means you can go back to those people because they are real. This doesn't mean that we don't do segmentation, right, of user types and different behavioral models. That's absolutely fine. But please, don't make up a fake Jenny, okay? So how do we put this in place? I came into Salesforce in 2014, in part to help Salesforce become a more design-led, customer-focused organization. And just so happened, at that time, the CEO, the CTO, and the president of products were kicking off a project, the biggest project in Salesforce history, to redesign, reinvent the core CRM experience, the core CRM product. And the question is, how are we going to do this? And we needed to do it fast. We only had 7 weeks to come up with the designs of the new product and the prioritization of those designs so that we can get them to the Scrum teams 7 weeks from then so that they could start development for the next Dreamforce in 2015. So big product, really short time frame. And what we knew is that from a product perspective, we understood what the executives were asking for because Salesforce, as a product, is a digital platform that has a series of related objects in the system. The primary objects were opportunities, accounts, and contacts. So we knew at some point, right, the project would not be complete unless we had redesigned or reinvented those 3 core objects in the Salesforce platform. However, we did not frame the project that way, and we didn't do the project that way. Instead, what we did is we looked at the customer, and we took a customer perspective. So we stepped back and we said, if our main customers are salespeople, what do salespeople do? What do they care about? What do they worry about? And what are their big aspirations? How do we approach this from the perspective of the salesperson themselves? So from our experience with salespeople, and some of us were salespeople ourselves, we said, well, if you just observe a salesperson's day, what are they doing? They're sending a lot of email, and they're making a lot of phone calls, and they're going to a lot of meetings. So these we call the bread and butter experiences. This is where we're going to start, with the things that salespeople just spend a lot of their time doing. And then, what do they worry about? They worry about closing their deals, right? So then we're going to expand out to the next concentric circle, and we're going to look at the world of deals from the perspective of the salesperson. Deals just so happen to map to the opportunities object in Salesforce. And then in order for them to close their deals and have effective communications, they need to have good relationships, right? Now, this was a little bit more vague. So we went to the product data science team and we said, we have this idea that, that salespeople are trying to manage their relationships. Is there anything in the product data that you can point us to that will actually tell us whether this is important and how do we get to it? So the data science team came back and they said very quickly, they turned around and they said, well, the 2 most frequently used objects are accounts and contacts. And people are constantly toggling back and forth to accounts and contacts. And we said, maybe there's a relationship between their relationships and those two objects, right? So let's interrogate that whole space from the point of view of the salesperson. And then finally, what are salespeople really doing, right? What are they really doing? They're working. How do they view their work? How do they view their work goals? How do they view their careers? And what role does Salesforce play as a product in that larger set of goals that salespeople have around their work? There was nothing in the Salesforce platform at the time, right, that would even touch that or would even suggest that. But if we worked inside out from the salesperson and what they care about, this is what the world looks like from their perspective. And this is the actual slide for how we frame the entire project for the Lightning Experience redesign. Right, inside out, from the micro moments, from a salesperson's point of view, to the things they care about their work and their career. And then, as I mentioned, even though we had a really tight deadline, we spent many, many hours with salespeople in their offices, watching them work, going with them to client meetings and to customer meetings, watching them plan their meetings and schedule and try to get all the people together for an important customer meeting. This is an actual picture from one of those visits with an actual customer named Anthony. And one of the things that we saw very clearly is that the vast majority of his day was this. This is like hours, like maybe 5 hours out of his day. And he has 3 screens open. He's got LinkedIn to see who he's emailing and their background. He's got Salesforce on his phone where he's looking at the opportunity and what all the previous interactions were with this customer. And then he's got his email, right, where he's actually writing the email. And we said, oh my goodness, this guy is just toggling back and forth between 3 screens. There's so much context switching, right? He can't work from home, right, unless he's got the same setup at home, unless he has 3 screens. So again, we went back to product data science and we said, do a lot of people do this? Do they toggle back and forth between all these different screens? And they went and they did an analysis and they said, yes, they do. They're constantly toggling back and forth from the opportunities page to the contact page, into their email. They've got multiple browsers open. And we said, well, this is crazy. Let's just take what we observed and redesign the opportunity page to be able to allow salespeople to have the context of who their contact is right there in the page and be able to write the email right there. So it was farm to table, directly from the insight in the field with the customer, directly to creating a couple of sketches and prototypes that we can go back and test with customers. We bypassed a lot of arguments, a lot of these brainstorming sessions. We didn't have to have a lot of brainstorming sessions, right? Because we could see immediately and intently by being there with customers what their needs were, what their desires were, and what the friction points were in what they needed with the product. So more on the iteration and the testing and the prototyping a little bit later. But this farm-to-table approach of going deep with customers, being customer-obsessed, resisting proxies, right? We didn't start with the surveys. We didn't start with the numbers. We started with real people and their real experiences. So here's your first exercise, okay? How might you and your team go further in obsessing over customers instead of technology, product, competition, or business model, and in resisting proxies? So you're going to turn to your partner, and you're going to tell them on your team what you currently do to be customer obsessed, and based on this, what you might start doing to get deeper with the customer, and what you might stop doing if you're using any proxies, okay? So each person, just kind of talk to the other person, to your partner, and tell them you'll each have 2 minutes, and I'll ask you to switch after 2 minutes, and the other person will share, okay? What are you currently doing to be customer obsessed, what you might start, and then what you might stop. Okay, if you haven't done so, switch. Okay, let's wrap up. Let's wrap up. And come on back. Come on back. If you guys, would anyone like to call out one thing that they would like to stop or start doing to be customer obsessed? Anybody? Stop using proxies. Like, which proxy do you currently use?
I speak to coaches instead of speaking directly to members.
Yeah.
Ask coaches what's members like instead of going directly to members.
Yeah. Can you actually be with the members themselves? That's right. Salespeople. Somebody else said salespeople. Talking to salespeople instead of customers. How can you actually talk to the customers? Right. It doesn't mean stop talking to salespeople altogether, but the proxies, right? Like, really resist the proxies. How about personas? Did anybody talk about personas? A couple of people talked about personas. Is there a possibility of using real people?
Oh, totally.
Yeah. Right. So good. So hopefully you guys have started thinking about, okay, how do we actually start resisting the proxies? And another thing is, how do we actually shift our conversations to really be focused on customers at all times and resist the temptation to talk about technology focus or product focus or business model focus, right? That there's a different approach to being truly customer obsessed. Okay. So the second thing that has really helped to guide me is to align KPIs, metrics, and principles on the team so that all members of the team are telling the same story and driving to the same sort of philosophical approach. So your measures reflect your vision and your values. Your metrics tell a story. They tell a story to the team about what's important. And often, these metrics don't necessarily tell the same story as we tell when we're just saying what's important and what our philosophy is. So let me give you a couple of examples. So at Salesforce, there's the V2 Mom. Anybody hear of the V2 Mom? Know about the V2 Mom? Okay. So Mark Benioff, according to Mark Benioff, he says that the number one reason for Salesforce's success as an enterprise software company and as a visionary company is the V2 Mom. The V2 Mom is a goal-setting process that happens every year, and it stands for vision, values, methods, obstacles, and metrics. So the goal setting we often think of as our goals, our methods, and our metrics, right? What will we achieve and how will we measure whether we've achieved it? But in fact, at Salesforce, this particular exercise forces everyone to start with the vision and the values and then make sure that the metrics reflect those vision and values. Because oftentimes, especially at a large company, and especially as a company scales, we say we have the same vision and values, but our metrics might tell a different story. So for example, if your vision is to be truly customer obsessed, and your values are to always do what's right for the customer, and your metrics are primarily things like customer engagement or the amount of time that the customer spends in your product, what might be the problem with that? Do customers value how much time they spend in your product? So what might a better metric be? Well, do customers care about how much they engage with your product? Getting the job done. What is the customer's goal, and how well does your product help them meet that goal, right? So how do you create those metrics? Well, there's a company that has done an exceptional job of this, especially in the last couple of years, and that is Intuit. Intuit has created, anybody here work at Intuit? A few people? No one? So Intuit has created this one Intuit dashboard. And the founder, Scott Cook, realized a few years ago that while he had taken the company on a journey to be more customer obsessed, their metrics will still primarily financial and product metrics. They were things like engagement, the number of features that customers used, right? What are the sort of profitability? What's the rate that customers actually, when they start with a trial product, actually upgrade to the paid product? Those types of things. Did customers care about any of those things? No. So they embarked on a project to say, what are the things that customers actually care about? And they came up with these three things. Customers care, Intuit customers, they're small businesses, they're small business owners. They care about three things. They care about getting more money. They care about doing very little work on the accounting side, right? What small business owner likes to do their accounting, right? Right? So actually, like amount of time spent in the product is a negative, right? Because no work is the positive, right? So maybe less time in the product would be a positive. So more money, no work, and complete confidence, right? Complete confidence that your finances are being taken care of. Those are the right metrics from a customer-obsessed standpoint, right? From a customer point of view. Those are the things that actually customers care about, not the product team, right? Not the shareholders. Those are the things that the customers care about. And then they ordered this dashboard in a really brilliant way. So the priority of the metrics go from left to right. And it reflects a vision and a set of values at Intuit. And that vision and those values are, if our employees are happy and they feel really motivated to build great products, they will build great products for customers. And if customers are happy, the shareholders will be just fine. So all business reviews and all product team reviews at Intuit happen in this priority order. And the numbers that are red on the left or yellow on the left matter a lot more than the numbers that are red or yellow on the right, right? Because remember, this philosophy that's reflected in the way that the metrics are constructed is if our employees are happy and engaged, they will do the right thing for the customers. And if the customers are getting their needs met, our shareholders will be just fine, right? So this entire sort of, and then the product teams went off and they said, okay, how do we measure more money? How do we measure no work? How do we measure complete confidence? And then how do we measure this other delight thing over here as well? And they started re-instrumenting the product, right? From things like how many features are being used and how much time are people spending in it and things like that, to how many days from the time that somebody sends an invoice to the time that actually shows up in their bank account. Right? How do we re-instrument the product to reflect the things that the customers care about, not the things that we as the product team care about? Okay? So this is a great example of rethinking your metrics and aligning your whole team around the things that you say matter, right? And the stories that you say, right? But actually, what do you do? And how do you measure what you do? And what do your measures reflect about what your product team really cares about, okay? So your next exercise is to really think about what vision and values your current metrics communicate, and what stories do your metrics tell about what matters to your company and to your product team. All right, so you're going to do the same thing. Turn to your partner. Tell them what are your current top metrics or metric for your product. What kind of story does this tell to a new product manager about what's really important? And what could we start measuring to shift that story? Okay, 2 minutes and 2 minutes. All right, switch if you haven't done so.
Sharing the slides.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Let's come on back. Let's come on back. And I have a question for you. With a show of hands, how many of you guys discovered that your metrics actually tell a different story than what you say matters to you? Yeah. Was that a surprise? It was not a surprise. It was a surprise to some people. It was not a surprise to other people. So again, making sure that you as product leaders start to interrogate, if we say that these things are the things that really matter, how do we make sure our metrics reflect that, right? Okay, and the last principle, and I heard a lot about this today, which is great. But I'm going to emphasize a piece of this, which is showing things early. So it's about experimentation and iteration. A lot of the talks today have been about this. And what I'm going to ask you to do, however, is to share your early prototypes very, very, very early. And by very early, I mean so early that all you have is a sketch. And your customer, if they have a better idea when you're getting feedback, can actually sketch something better. Right? If you have a demo, if you have a prototype, guess what? The customer that you're talking to isn't going to be able to build on it. Right? So I'm going to encourage you guys to think about how can we get new ideas and nascent ideas into the hands of customers for their feedback way earlier than we've ever thought imaginable. And this is really scary to some people because oftentimes we're working on things that are secretive, and we only want to share with customers when we feel like it's really good and it's really right. Well, guess what? Also, customers sense that, if you're waiting until you think the idea is really good to share it with them, they're probably not going to be that negative. They're going to be less likely to build on it, right? And they're going to know that it's going to look baked, it's going to feel baked, you're going to get more defensive about it. So how do we actually share things with customers really early on? Remember, we're on an uncharted ocean, right? Heading toward a destination. We're going to make a lot of wrong turns. How do we find out that that turn is wrong? Before we invest a lot of time and attention into it. Okay, so this is, again, from the Lightning Experience redesign. This is a brand new idea that we had, again, going farm to table, directly from observing customers. Again, remember Anthony earlier on that I talked about, that customer? What he had and what we observed, actually, with a lot of salespeople is that they had either whiteboards with like the names of their current prospects and leads, with the numbers of how much it was, what stage it was in, maybe. Some people had Post-its that they actually put on their monitor. That when a lead fell through, they would literally rip off the Post-it and throw it in the trash. And we said, this kind of looks like they're trying to Kanban their opportunities. They're trying to like create Kanban views of the deals they're working on. Why don't we create something like this? This was one of the most successful new product features. But it started with just a supposition, an idea, and something that, honestly, the engineers were very uncomfortable with because it would take a lot of engineering time to do this, and it would be based on a hunch that we got from observing a couple of salespeople in their offices. So what did we do? We started sketching. And this is literally the sketch that we showed to customers very early on. And as you can see, it's not pretty. The handwriting isn't very good. But it shows the idea. It shows the interaction. And when a customer had a better idea, they could literally, we brought Sharpies and pieces of paper with us, and they sketched their own idea. They made it better. We gave them Sharpies for the feedback. They would circle things, they would build on it, they would actually say, no, I would actually want it to be like this, not like this. Oh no, I have a better idea, let me sketch it out for you. The sketch is a completely democratic tool that anybody can do. You can have designers work with product managers, work with engineers, and work with customers, and work with salespeople, and work with product data science people, because everybody who's gone to kindergarten can sketch, right, with a Sharpie. So how do you get these very early, nascent, and literally sketchy ideas into the hands of customers before you ever thought it was possible? Okay? And last story, if you think that this is, oh, I'm in a highly regulated industry, or oh, it's really dangerous for us to do this because there's a lot of questions about what we can do and what we can't do. We worked at IDEO. I worked on a big project with the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which was created by Barack Obama. We worked directly with Elizabeth Warren to create the consumer engagement tools and strategies for the CFPB. And this was after Republicans took control of Congress. And so they said to us, if you do anything, you show anybody anything that would make our banking constituents unhappy, we will prosecute you, and you may end up in jail. Okay? So the stakes for prototyping new ideas and nascent ideas and showing them to people and potentially having these things get out into the press were pretty high, like very, very high. But we wanted to create a set of tools for people to make better financial decisions. So what did we do? We created early prototypes with literally no words. No words. There were no words in the prototype. There were no numbers, there were no words, they were conceptual ideas. They were conceptual sketches. And we would, go to people, we would say, hey, if a government agency were to create tools about better financial decision making, what would you want these things to say? And verbally, again, we would encourage them to take the Sharpie, to fill it out, right, and to iterate our way through that experience, right? So no matter how high the stakes are, you think, in potentially your customer finding out that you're working on a new idea, the stakes can get much higher, and it still can be done. You can show early concepts, early ideas. You can get great feedback the earlier you show customers your ideas, and the more you enable them with democratic tools to build on those ideas and to change them, right? Don't wait until you've got a great prototype. Do it very early. Okay, so finally, your last exercise. What early prototypes can you share with a customer tomorrow? And I actually mean tomorrow. So all of you guys, I believe, have an early idea. You guys all have a great idea for your product. So taking that very early nascent idea that up to now has just been in your head, I want you to think about what can you show a customer tomorrow, and I mean literally tomorrow, and what do you want to learn from showing them that early idea, okay? So again, talk to your partner, and I'll tell you to switch.
The new content for you?
It's a little rocky. What do you think?
I think it's great. Everybody's really engaging in the conversation.
Okay, good.
We're thinking.
Are there any questions?
Yeah, there was one question about, someone asked this question about customer obsession with growth obsession. We see in tech culture where growth can be necessary to...
All right, switch, if you haven't done so. All right, let's come on back. Let's come on back. And so, how many of you, show of hands, feel that while there is an idea that you have, for some reason it's still too risky for you to show it to a customer tomorrow? All right, I want to know why. Why is it still too risky?
I think it's the nature of our customer. I work in an education technology company.
Yeah.
Our customers are schools.
Yeah.
And up to this point, our product's been very customized, and there's been a lot of hand-holding. And my idea is for how to make it more self-serve, off the shelf. And I think it's just too early stage, and I think our customers would be anxious if we weren't like fully marketing.
Yeah. So the reason I ask that is because I recognize that while this is a fun exercise, there's many things that are holding you back, especially in enterprise software, right? So one of the things that we did on, again, the Lightning Experience redesign is we had 3 lists of early customers that we showed early prototypes to. The first were salespeople, right? There we had a small list of people who were, salespeople who were like really engaged and they signed up and they want to be involved, right? Because they use the product all the time. That was a pretty large list. We had a second list of Salesforce admins, people who went to Dreamforce, and we knew we're like really deeply engaged and we're like really almost part of the company and an extension of the company. And so even if we showed them a terrible idea, they wouldn't really hold it against us because their career was actually based on Salesforce progressing as well. And then we had a third list, and that list were the buyers, the CIO buyers. And that list was a very small list, and that was a friends and family list of people who are either my personal friends or the personal friends of the SVP of product for Sales Cloud. And that was a very small list of feedback that we got because these had to be people that when we showed them really dumb ideas, right, that we knew were risky, we had a personal relationship that we could fall back on, okay? So yes, it's very risky and it's very hard, and I understand. So think about what level, right? Maybe it is a very, very small list of people that you trust and that you have personal relationships with. But really, the amount of value that you can get out of this is immense. Okay, so as you're charting out, right, in this tumultuous sea, where you know conceptually where you're going, you don't know how to get there, you have to keep all the people in the boat focused on the same goal, rowing in the same direction, making sure that they're all valuing the same things, right? They're valuing speed, they're valuing their course, they're not worried about the pirates, right? They're not looking at all the different directions, they're not looking for Iceland instead of the North Pole, right? Really think about how you can create these principles by staying focused on the customer as the North Star, making sure your metrics actually reflect the things that you say that you care about, that you're measuring the things that you say that you care about, and that you're actually showing your early ideas to customers as soon as you can, and letting them give you feedback and build with you, okay? So hopefully this will help you chart out and have better results, create more confidence, even when the seas are rough and the times are super tumultuous. Thank you.